Supreme Darkness releases on January 24th. While this set may not change what's at the top of meta contention, it introduces some huge support for several fan favorite decks, and some cards that may just change what decks can do for years to come. The future is uncertain, and everything is changing once again. Let me tell you one thing for sure though. Here's Evil Hero Toxic Bubble is a water fiend that can summon itself, if you feel so inclined, but locks you to heroes, and draws 2 cards if you control a fusion monster who hangs out with Dark Fusion. Dead End Prison is a light rock that summons itself if you control a Disciple of Dark Fusion, and can mill any hero monster for cost to let itself be used as a substitute for the fusion summon of any hero for the rest of the turn. Infernal Rider is a level 6 fiend that searches Dark Fusion on summon and can banish itself and 4 other monsters from the bin to set Super Poly from deck, but locks you to heroes, but unlocks you from needing to use Dark Fusion to summon evil heroes. Evil Assault pitches a card to search or summon an evil hero from deck, and this effect has Dark Fusion written on it. Dark Contact either summons Dark Fusion references by shuffling back from field, grave, or banished, or searches Dark Fusion or Supreme King's Castle. Dark Supremacy negates face-ups for each Dark Fusion associated spell card in your grave, and can banish itself to shuffle back 5 heroes. Evil Hero Inferno Wing Backfire is a fusion of Avian or Percinatrix and any hero that searches Dark Fusion or a friend of his on summon, and deals 21 when your hero destroys something in battle. The Darkest Night is a fusion of a fiend and a warrior that doesn't really do anything. An Evil Hero Neos Lord is a fusion of Neos or one of his buddies plus any effect monster on the field that can't be destroyed, and on summon or after your opponent's monster hits the grave, can steal a monster they control. For a long time it's been, at best, suboptimal to include the Evil Hero package in a hero deck on account of their best payoff being a decently protected board breaker to kill with, so these cards go a long way to give you a reason to integrate the Evil Heroes into your combos. Dark Supremacy is a major addition to a hero end board, finally giving them a simple, quick negate that can deal with spell and trap cards. Go on. Say Contrast Hero Chaos. Tell everyone that hero already has a negate. Make sure to bring up that it's entirely unfeasible to summon while not reflecting at all on why I didn't factor that into the statement that hero doesn't have a negate. Start typing right now! Gaining to Supremacy is a simple enough process of using Prison's Mill on Sinister Necrom so you can summon Rider from deck, and treat Prison as Avian or Percinatrix for the summon of Backfire who can search Supremacy. Doing that will put Rider in grave, but only 1 other monster to banish, so on its own that play ends on just 1 negate and a dream, but as a play you can pivot to midway through a hero combo by using a hero search on a Dusted to get Evil Assault. You can set this up alongside Super Poly and a few options of what to do with it. Going through the favorite contact line means you can put a Neos on board during your opponent's turn, so Neos Lord can eat 2 monsters they control with a bit of flexibility on when to use the second one. Darkest Night randomly is really generic, so you can fuse one of your warrior heroes with your opponent's Fiend Smith if you want, or your evil heroes with, like, Charles? Is he still relevant? I don't know. Dark Gaia exists to punish your opponent for nibbing you, and Bane can eat a high-level monster, giving you a bit of generic space without having to make Neos first. If you've already drawn Supremacy, Backfire can instead search Toxic Bubble, a completely free extender that also draws 2 to try and find non-engine, and it can't be overlooked that Prison mills any hero for cost. Can't be ashed, and negating it will only cut you off from Backfire, unless of course you 12-head your opponent by playing Percinatrix as a Primite and Devicer target. Altogether, the support helps to layer your disruption in hero, giving you 2 new interrupts situated in the back row, both of which are at least still functional through nib. The catch? It's a fuck ton of 1-ofs, dude. I hope you didn't take me seriously when I said non-engine earlier. Argo Star's Glorious Adra is a level 4 Earth Warrior that can quick effect banish itself from hand to 0 an opponent's monster, makes your continuous traps unrespondable on normal, and can banish itself from field to place up to 2 Argo Star's continuous traps from your hand or deck on your field. All the traps are trap monsters with the effect to jump back to the back row whenever they want. Lightning Todo can discard a card to summon itself and search an Argo Star's card. Swift Kapane can summon itself if you control a trap monster, then gain 5 life if an Argo Star monster is banished, and Slayer Etio can summon itself in response to your opponent's activation, then bounce a card on the field if an Argo Star is banished. And Home Stadium can pay 1,000 life to add back an Argo Star's card, pings for 5 each time a continuous trap is summoned, and can negate an opponent's card when a trap monster activates its effect. So, I see the idea here. Adra can place Todo and Kapane, you can summon both, search either Etio or the field, then make either Rabbit or Redoer. But this deck is missing both consistency and ceiling. The only way of setting up the traps turn 1 is with Adra, and the only feasible searcher for her is Rhoda. One step down from that, you have to play fucking Puppet Pawn, which for some ungodly reason lets your opponent search a monster too, so it's not even worth talking about because they just search Valor, so we're only talking about it all because of my manic perfectionism and Emperor Stove memes. It's also Ausa, who's a -1, locks you to Earth effects, so you can't do Rabbit, and you have to play a critical mass of Earth Warriors outside of Adra. Pawn, would you fuck off already? So how exactly were we meant to access Adra consistently? That's right. MX Saber Invoker, which the OCG unbanned a year and a half ago. I've lived lifetimes since then. Diabell Star hadn't even been printed. Unicorn was at 2. Doug Burgum was running for president. Do you even know who Doug Burgum is? There's been like 5 TCG ban lists since then, and they couldn't sneak him in there. But even if you get to Adra, the payoff is not impressive. In Archetype, all they have is Etio's non-targeting bounce, and the fields trigger effect negate, which I am sick of explaining over and over again the problems with and the very specific timings at which you can use it for it to be effective. But if you don't play the field spell, you can't add to-do back to hand to use on your opponent's turn, so your follow-up, if you can even call it that, tanks. So your best board is just Rabbit setting Etio with the field up, so you can bounce, pop a back row, negate, and search, all of which come with pretty clunky timings that really make you appreciate disruptions that you can just use whenever you want. So where does it land? I'm gonna say at best, once we finally get Invoker back, you can play it in Goblin Biker as a fucking 4-brick package to search Etio and make Redoer, or if you're too chicken shit, you can cut the other 2 traps and just place Etio. As its own deck, it's inconsistent and underpowered, and as an engine, it's bricky and we don't even have its starter yet. This may be the most underwhelming new archetype since Invoker was still banned everywhere. Speedroid Kernel Clackers can banish a Speedroid card from grave to place a Speedroid in your other scale, but lock you to Wind, and when it's destroyed, can summon another copy of itself as a tuner. Speedroid Wing Synchron can pop itself in a level 2 Wind in your other scale to synchro summon Clear Wing, and when it goes to the extra, if you have 2 or more Wind synchros with different types, can mill a Speedroid spell or trap. Speedroid Clearwing Wonder can pop a card for each type of Wind synchro you control, and can banish itself from graveyard when your opponent special summons 2, and I wouldn't do this if it didn't precisely explain the effect. Flicker, a Wind Synchro you control. High Speedroid Glider number 2 reborns a level 7 non-tuner Wind Synchro on summon, and if your opponent special summons while you control a Clearwing, can banish itself from grave to give all your opponent's monsters 5 levels. And Crystal Clearwing over Synchro Dragon is a level 12 that needs either 2 tuners or 1 tuner Synchro plus Clearwing that can negate a card or effect once per turn and gain attack if it was a monster, and floats into a Clearwing monster. Do you think Baron's body was even cold in the ground before they started writing this card? I feel like I'm so frequently saying that new waves of support give decks more consistency and ceiling, but this wave of Speedroid seems a little more hyper-focused on fixing the hole in the roof. In addition to getting a new soft once Omni Negate to go with their monster negate and their spell negate, you also get a new trap that not only potentially removes more cards than duplicate, but also can cycle over Dragon to reset its Omni. Searching the trap can be done with Cork Shooter if you don't need it for extension, but you can also dump it right to grave with Synchron if need be. Synchron can also dump Duplicate if you need an extender, or one of the spells if you need one more example to make the sentence structure flow better. And while it's not a starter on its own, needing setup in grave, Clacker is a good combo piece that makes it a lot easier to profitably reach Clearwing, which you'll need to make both Crystal Clear Dragons. And Glider number 2 makes it feasible to make both of them in one turn, since it'll revive Clearwing after you sync it off for one of the bigger dragons, immediately satisfying the full requirement for Overdragon. Additionally, its graveyard effect is useful not only for turning all your opponent's Ryziels into level 9s, but also if for some reason you end up with Clearwing on your end board, Glider number 2 will force your opponent to control monsters it can negate, whether they like it or not. All in all, while it's not revolutionary for Speedroid combos, which still mostly have the same basic premise, it does make the end board stronger, especially in the TCG where this deck really suffered from the loss of Baron. But also it's insanely funny how much this support would very much like you to play Baron. Baron is way better than Crystal Clear since it'll actually protect the rest of your combo from Nib instead of just itself. It's a second type, so you actually get 2 pops of Wonder, and it also gets its Omni reset by Wonder. You can make it with Cash Tier Unicorn instead of using up the Clearwing body for it. I'm starting to understand why all the Speedroid players I know are, in the politest terms possible, losers. This is the most cucked archetype outside of exactly Altergeist, which underwent a Joker 2 style humiliation ritual that forcibly turned them into a combo deck in 2023. Saz is going to come to my house and choke me to death when I send him the rough draft of this video. Materia Actor? God damn, dude, what's it been? 4 years? Where have you guys been? Oh, I see. The rest of your support was in DC that past January and had to lay low afterwards so the feds couldn't find them. That makes sense. What were they doing in DC exactly? Oh, okay, that's not important. I don't need to know. Just chill out. Jesus. Materia Actor Exoraptor can pitch a card to search a level 3 vanilla and summon itself, and can quick effect Kalut for rank 3s. Zeptwing can summon itself if you control a Materia Actor card, searches a Materia Actor, then adds back or reborns a level 3 vanilla on summon or flip. Don't see that one very often anymore, do ya? Materia Actor Meltdown Can prosper for a Materia Actor card, then put the excavated cards back on top, and grab a material from under a rank 3 you control to your hand, and each time your Xyz monster uses an effect, you can attach the top card of your deck to a Materia Actor Xyz you control. Critical omni-negates and grabs a material from a Materia Actor Xyz to hand, then forces you to bottom a card if it was a monster, boosts your Materia Actors if it was a spell, or sets it if it was a trap. And Materia Actor Exegard is a generic rank 3 that can detach a material to summon a Materia Actor monster or search a back row, and if your opponent summons a monster, can add up to 2 of its materials to your hand, including a Materia Actor, then bounce a card on the field if there's a vanilla in your grave. All around, a competent new direction for a set of cards that were so directionless, it can't even be confirmed that they were in motion at all. For one thing, Exegard being generic means you can get into your engine from any rank 3 play, so on top of having 3 main deck names, all of which can make Exegard on their own with just a discard, you can just as easily get things started with Terror Top or Tour Guide. And on top of being the best Invoker a deck could ask for, it's also a pretty strong piece of disruption, being able to add follow-up to hand and bounce a card all at once. And Meltdown can make that disruption even stronger by stacking something like an Ash Blossom to the top after prosping, so that later in the turn you can tuck it under Exegard and add it to hand. And even without stacking, Meltdown not being once per turn gives you plenty of chances to randomly pluck something good off the top. This also makes the deck work well with Armored Xyz, since you can stack something good to draw with Torpedo to avoid the annoying situation of Torpedo drawing your Fortress target, while also having the next top deck be a good attach for Exegard. Following that thread, we love the weave, don't we folks? You of course have access to the full rank 3 suite, since none of these cards lock you as long as Gigadra isn't on board, and so too can you go for any link plays you can manage like Masquerena or Closed Heaven, or since all of them are dragons, Hieratic Seal. The main deck monsters have some pretty interesting synergies as well. Exoraptor and Gigadra basically do the exact same thing as each other in reverse, but also searching your vanilla with Exoraptor can consistently enable Giga's ability to summon Zeptwing by pitching the vanilla. And whether you're summoning Zeptwing with Giga pitching the vanilla or Exegard detaching it, that'll be in the graveyard for Zeptwing to reborn as the additional part of its search effect, so you can get right to another rank 3. And of course, you know I love vanilla theory because it lets you say the stupidest sentences ever. Like, you can play Baby Dragon as your vanilla so that you have a dragon for Seals plays and a win for Totem Bird and Takatomborg. If you want the most attack points for Primite Roar, there's fucking Jerry Beans, man. Fuck, I feel so alive right now. And while we're talking about Primite, it also bears mentioning that the Goblin engine synergizes with these cards because they sort of share a design philosophy. Exegard and Gabanga are basically the same card, an alright disruption attached to a generic rank 3 that accesses your full engine. But the cracks in this deck start to show when you look at some of the similarities and differences in the two. Just like Gabanga, getting hand trapped on Exegard can be damning not only for your ability to extend, but also for its own use as disruption. If you detach a material to attempt to search Meltdown and it gets stopped, now there's only one material left on Exegard with no way to accrue more and get the necessary 2. And on top of that, unlike Gabanga, making use of its generic nature will also get in the way of using the bounce, since Terror Top and Takatomborg aren't Materia Actors to fulfill the requirement, leaving you reliant on Meltdown to sneak one onto it. So while there's plenty of neat stuff here, the problems with rank 3 spam remain pretty unchanged. Arcana Force 5, the Hierophant, can pitch itself to give your Arcana Forces a fucking break for a change, and on summon, Head summons a level 4 lower Arcana Force from deck, or Tails gives your opponent an Arcana Force from deck. Arcana Force 19, the Sun, can summon itself if there's a card that flips a coin on the field, and on summon, Head sets a spell from deck that flips a coin, or Tails destroys all cards in the back row. Light Force stops working half the time on turn 3 if you don't control Light Barrier, boosts fairies by 3, and can pitch a card to search 2 Arcana Force monsters but lock you to Arcana Forces. Arcana Spread maybe summons an Arcana Force from deck, maybe reborns a monster that tosses a coin. And if you care which one that badly, just draw Light Barrier, dumbass, and can bash itself from grave to add back a coin tosser. And Arcana Force EX, the Chaos Ruler, must be summoned by sending 3 Arcana Forces from either field to the graveyard, and on summon, Head summons a level 10 Arcana Force from deck, Tails searches a card that tosses a coin. And if Light Barrier is on board, your opponent cannot activate monster effects. Deck equals bad. Solution: drain! I mean, how exactly can I complain when Arcana Force isn't just bad? It's generationally bad. And more broadly, cards that flip coins are... This is the most do-nothing card I've ever read.
Yeah.
And you need 2 heads! So nothing ever happens?
Nothing ever happens. And this thing's own coin flip effect is a choice between ooh, what if Lad was Gate Guardian combined? And
Watch out for when it... Ugh.
2 floodgates. So I honestly don't blame Konami for going ahead and admitting that Arcana Force's gimmick was never flipping coins, but actually not functioning unless Light Barrier is on the field. Fusing from either field both makes the Chariot suck slightly less. I'm imagining like the people looking down at the board, but instead of a kaiju, it's like the opponent with the Chariot. and also makes the Tails effect on Hierophant potentially even better than the Heads effect, since you can give your opponent a big one like the World that you can use as material and then bring back with spread. Giving one to your opponent also turns on Talons and Thrust with their mandatory coin flip effects, and if you're lucky with the Empress, you can maybe even hand rip, and god fucking the Sun searching reading means that it actually just grabs any card that flips a coin and then gives you the extra normal that you might need to summon it. And Light Force searching both the Sun and the Fiend so that you can make all your effects actually fucking work makes it something of a one-card starter for the deck with enough asterisks and footnotes to make David Foster Wallace look concise. Let me break it down for you. You can World FTK by giving your opponent the World, fusing it into the Chaos Ruler, and searching spread to bring it back, but the only one-card starter for that is Light Force, which is still only a 1.5 card starter and is completely unsearchable except with the Sun, which you can only use if you have a coin flip card on field already, and it only actually works if that card is specifically Light Barrier, in which case you're already playing. So scrap that, maybe we just go Chaos Ruler and summon Light Ruler from Protected from being targeted, except I had this really good idea while writing this segment, which was to reread the Light Ruler, during which I learned that it only protects itself. Light Force locks you to Arcana Forces, so it's not that you can make a rank 10 here. Is anything good to search, maybe?
Okay, would you take Temperance out on a date?
Would.
Perfect. That's what I was thinking.
You see those hands? Get John Moore on the call. Okay, so even the potential best payoffs like Tour of Doom and Cup of Ace still can't be guaranteed because Light Barrier only fixes your results on Arcana Force monsters and the Arcana spells that force themselves into the club. So I fucking hope you like Skill Drain Pass. I hope it's your favorite board in the world. I hope Arcana Force players stay up all night stroking their shit thinking about Rexterm. I hope you add lotion on your dick during the Arsarctic discourse. But you know, everything I've said so far can be completely ignored if you just hit the goddamn coin flips. If you're just good at the game, then Arcana Force is good. Crystron Tristeros summons a Crystron from deck in response to your opponent's card or effect, then Synchro summons a machine using the monster you summoned, and can banish himself from grave to kill a Synchro you control and summon 2 Crystrons from deck, but lock you to machines. Crystron Sulfador can summon itself by popping a Crystron card you control, and mills 2 Crystrons on summon. Crystron Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is 10 key for Crystron cards, gives Crystrons an extra life, and can banish itself from grave to reborn a Crystron. Cluster protects Crystrons from being banished, and can shuffle back a Crystron to pop a card, or 2 if you control a Crystron Synchro. And Eliskeletius adds back a Crystron card on summon, docks your opponent's board by 5, and if he's destroyed, can reborn a Crystron. Yet you'd think this segment would be full of references to Halka Fibrax and all the things Crystron lost from him being banned, but the weird thing is, I don't know that I ever learned what Hulk does in Crystron. I'm not sure anyone did. On the other hand, pretty much all of these cards solely support pure Crystron and give it that extra oomph it needs to be competitive in a modern setting. Sulfador dumping 2 sets up all manner of graveyard effects like Thistfern and Smyger searching, Inclusion reviving, or even just dropping something in the trash for Eliskeletius to dig out later, like an Eclair that was just sitting right at the top on a napkin even. Seeing how it's a level 5 machine, dumping a Sulfefnir with it can set up Cyber Dragon Nova and subsequently Infinity. Sulfefnir also can get you directly to Sulfador by summoning and then popping himself, triggering his effect to summon from deck. But you can also get to it through Inclusion, which can search Sulfador and then acts as the target to destroy. Being searchable by Smyger, not only is Inclusion itself a 1-card combo for the deck, but so too is any card that mills Smyger like Foolish Burial or Cherubini.
I can't stop winning!
Tristeros is not only the new best tuner to end on for your quick synchro plays, pulling out whatever level you need from deck to make Dawn Dragster, Quarian Gandrax, or Excel Synchron, the quick effect also gives you great potential to play through and around hand traps. Chaining to an Imperm on Sulfador to pull Citri from deck and sync off the Sulfador will dodge the negation and put up a Dragster to stop the second Imperm. Chaining to Nib will make Samurai Destroyer who will float into a machine from grave to start up your recovery. Even just chaining to Ash on Sulfador will basically get one of those Foolishes through, getting Sulfefnir or Smyger in grave like nothing happened. And his graveyard effect combos with Eliskeletius very well, letting you bring out whatever you want from deck, like 2 5s for Nova, and then use Ellie Skelly to float into that very same banished Tristeros. As for Jack Skeletus himself, he's an oddball in a lot of ways. He's not a boss monster since Crystron already has a fantastic boss in Quarian Gandrax, but he's also not a Denglong or Ib type where he himself gets you so much advantage to set up your end board. All his effects focus more on recursion. You need to use your engine to set up things for him to bring back that will benefit you down the line. Sometimes he'll just be grabbing follow-up and then letting the Tristeros kill him to double E-Telly. He is useful for getting to cluster since you might need to use the once per turn Smyger to search Inclusion, so your only other access to it is milling it and then letting Ghost in the Skull add it back like an Eclair that only had 1 bite in it. I mean, why would you even throw that out? There's so much Eclair left there. The point being that Crystron now has a lot more consistency to make some deceptively powerful end boards. Mitsurugi no Mikoto Saji is a level 4 reptile that upon being summoned or tributed searches a Mitsurugi spell or trap. Kusanagi adds back a Mitsurugi card. Both of them contribute themselves to protect another reptile from destruction. Ame no Murakumo is a ritual that Raigekis on summon can negate a card or effect unless your opponent discards one, and when it's tributed, searches a Mitsurugi card, then summons itself. Futsu no Mitamo reborns a reptile once per chain when your opponent special summons, and also searches, then comes back when he's tributed. Mitsurugi ritual can summon any reptile ritual monster, either from hand by tributing reptiles from deck, or from deck by tributing from hand or field, but you can only use each mode once per turn. Prayers can search a Mitsurugi card, take 8, then summon a Mitsurugi from hand or grave, or both if you tribute a reptile for cost. And Great Purification can negate a card or effect by tributing a big reptile, and can banish itself from grave to reborn a reptile, then tribute another monster. So there's a conspiracy. I'm not sure which one, but there definitely is one. Either this deck is bad, and a vocal subset of players are conspiring to trick people into thinking it's good, or the deck is good, and there's a counter contingent trying to suppress the information that the deck is good to avoid massive buyouts. Now, Saz has confirmed to me point blank that he is personally doing the latter conspiracy, but that doesn't mean the first one isn't also happening. Because as far as I can tell, this deck sits deeply in the middle. The payoffs are incredible, with the ability to trigger Ame to board wipe, either by bringing it back with Futsu while your opponent combos, or by tributing it with Purification or Prayers. In addition, the Omni from Purification is very strong, while Ame's fake Omni is alright for applying pressure to make your opponent pick between their effect resolving or their options in hand. Meanwhile, Futsu also gets you tons and tons of follow-up by bringing back every Mitsurugi name you went through to trigger again for more searches and recursion. The ritual spell being both high ritual art and advanced ritual art is crazy, triggering any of your names, or Night Sword Serpent, for whom I forgot to think of a clean way to integrate into this sentence, from deck to summon a ritual from hand, and then after being returned to hand with Kusanagi, can sack the first ritual you summon to bring out the other from deck, triggering that ritual to search Purification, and then come back completely refunding the cost of the ritual summon. So what, pray tell, is the catch? No one card combo. None of the Mitsurugi cards accomplish anything on their own, so you're stuck trying to draw Saji plus one of a specific few other names that extend you further than that. What's good is that any level 4 extender does kind of get the job done, since you can overlay it with Saji into King of the Celtic Guardians to search the ritual monster and use the spell you search to summon it. But don't sleeve up your Saki Thomas just yet, because the best level 4 extender is actually Fiend Smith Engraver. Since any Fiend Smith play gets Lacrima, you can use her as the other material for Feralims. So Engraver and Tract are both valid options to pair with Saji to do full Mitsurugi combo with Desiree and we'll get to that on top of it. But that build is still in the realm of 2-card combos, which people still make fun of you for in 2025. No, if you want a true 1-card Mitsurugi combo, may I introduce you to X, the Everything Raziel, the home for free speech, Blaze Your Glory, presented by Adrian Dittman.
A subsidiary of Viacom.
Since X can set up King of the Feralims before the normal summon, you can use it to search Saji, and then by looping King of the Feralims with we'll get to that. You can also search Ame, which as you may have noticed by now is full combo. So you can make Detonator while also making a bunch of other interruptions that don't care about the rank 4 lock, since they're all main deck based, similar to Voiceless Raziel, but with more connective tissue rather than just doing both combos parallel to each other. But this suggestion forces Mitsurugi into competition with Fiend Smith, who also have one specific Raziel that starts their combo, but can also play on their own if need be. Engraver is a better card to draw than Saji. Tract is a better draw than Prayers. So it's hard to call it a better engine to combine with Raziel, even though the ceiling can be way higher. No, I'd say that while this first wave shows a lot of promise, please don't make me say it. It says in your contract you have to say it. I'm not gonna say it. You're gonna fucking say it. With a strong second wave of support, this deck makes me want to slam my dick in a waffle iron. It also says in your contract that you have to say something it does for Ogdotic. Oh, for fuck's... If your opponent outs Zerol, you can Futsu revive it to turn the floodgate back on. There. Done. Gladiator Beast Castell can summon itself and a second Glad Beast from hand, searches any Gladiator spell trap when it's summoned by the effect of a Glad Beast, and tags out at end of battle. Test Bear can summon itself if you control a Glad that was summoned from deck or extra, tributes itself and shuffles back a Glad from hand or field to summon 2 Glads from deck, and treats them as having been summoned by a Glad Beast effect. Flavian, Coliseum of the Gladiator Beast, is a field spell that can pitch a card to search a Glad Beast, summons a Glad from deck when your opponent attacks and protects it from battle, and during the end phase if you summon a Glad from deck this turn, sets a Gladiator trap from deck. Dareos is a Link 2 that needs at least 1 Glad, summons a Glad from grave on summon or deck if your opponent controls a monster, but locks you into only using Glads as link material for the turn, and protects Glads from destruction during your opponent's battle phase. And Gladiator Beast Claudius is like a fake fusion, like it just happens, of 5 Glad Beasts from field or grave that on summon lets you conduct your next battle phase twice, and if your opponent activates a monster effect, can summon a Glad Beast from deck on your turn or from extra deck on your opponent's turn. We were talking about humiliation rituals earlier, and I kind of think maybe beating out Altergeist is what happened to Glad Beast when when the battle phase stopped existing. Like, I know people who will say that Gladbeast has still retained its identity on account of the fact that this support can OTK really easily, but I'd counter that OTKing is antithetical to Gladbeast's gimmick. They specifically don't want the game to end in one battle phase. A battle-centric control deck just can't exist anymore, and what better way to represent that than 4 of the 5 cards on display this cycle being able to trigger Glad effects outside the battle phase. Giselle is probably the best way ever to get off Gladbeast turn 1, triggering not just whatever name you have in hand alongside him, but also getting to trigger his own effect to search any of the Gladbeast back row like Comeback or Flavian, as well as the previously unsearchable back row like Proving Ground, Rejection, and Return. Flavian similarly guarantees you access to the traps, including the ones you didn't have access to before like Lash and Namasha, but more importantly the already accessible War Chariot and Charge, getting you an extra interruption at the end of the turn while freeing up Giselle and Test Panther to grab the spells. Darius can trigger one from Grave, meaning you can loop one of the older non-once per turn names like Darius or Adarix, who actually isn't even that old. This card's from 2019, they just made a non-once per turn mill for cost because Gladbeast needed all the help they could get, or trigger a name that was summoned the wrong way like with Rescue Cat or Rejection. This also makes Rescue Cat a sort of one card combo since you can summon 2 Giselle, link them off for Darius, and then bring a Giselle back to trigger it, but what's kind of frustrating about this line is that you have to lock yourself under Darius before summoning Test Panther, so the non-Gladbeast Panther gets kind of stuck on the field, unable to be linked off for something useful. Ideally, you'll want to try to do it the other way around, make Panther first, then link off Panther for Darius, but even then I kind of feel like this lock was kind of designed to let you link off your extra bodies into specifically Apollousa at the end of your turn, which, as you may know, isn't an option for us. Not even like there's a Fiend Gladbeast you can use to make. We'll get to that. So maybe you can just leave up IP. What's good though is that the deck does get an interesting new proprietary end boss. Claudius has a hefty material line, and yet he's actually very free to make as long as you can spin your wheels for long enough. On your turn, he can be crucial to playing into a board by getting out more bodies even as your opponent tries to remove them, or for playing through hand traps since you can punish your opponent for ashing you by teleporting out a Glad to possibly even do more than you would have with the effect they negated. On your opponent's turn, he can act like another copy of Tamer Editor, cheating your negates out of the extra, and maybe triggering something like a Shurag, which even without a big tri-engine is a decent link 4 to put all your bodies into, but also could cheat out BBL Gizzy for a quick pop Tua. And of course, conducting a second battle phase all but guarantees that once you get to turn 3, the game is over. Not only is he alone hitting for 74, but also getting to clear your opponent's monsters in battle, then have an end of battle phase to tag out your Glads into removal, more bodies, or even just bigger attackers will pretty much seal the deal. So in that way, you still get to do the actual Gladbeast thing, now with a new form that respects that in the 2020s, the battle phase is all about 0 to death comboing your opponent. Tenyi Spirit Saruya is a level 4 worm tuner that can summon itself if you control a worm or a non-effect monster, and if it's synced into a worm, summons a Tenyi Link that can't be linked off, and burns you for 1,000 times its link rating. Tenyi Infinity adds Vessels or Circle on activation, contribute a worm to pop a monster, and during the end phase can tag out into flawless perfection. And Tenyi Spirit Mulad Hara is a generic level 8 synchro that can't be targeted or destroyed and attacks twice while there's a non-effect monster on the board, and on summon, if there's 2 or more worms in your grave or banished, searches a Tenyi field spell. What's that? Is any field spell? They printed AFD again? And now they're gonna do it again because I said to stop?
Oh, for crying out loud!
This card is a pretty neat addition to the Tenyi Sword Soul Mega Complex. Although it is generic, the specific carve-outs generally preclude you from really having any use for it outside its home. Even in Sword Soul Pure, making it with Moye won't do since the token won't go to the grave, so you only have 1 worm. But hey, you can do a lot with just 1 worm, am I right? Up high! Just a little Tuesday morning hijinks. You're more likely to make it with Saruya, who can combo with any level 4 Tenyi, or Ashuna, summoning one from deck to make Mula, then chainblock its search effect with the effect to summon a Link, which can be Monk just to have something to attribute with Circle, Shaman to make use of its revive, or Sahasrara, which will take half your health bar, but will give you targeting protection if that's your kind of thing. Mula's main purpose is to grab Infinity to get into Tenyi's massively powerful but previously unsearchable spell cards, maybe board break a little or pop a Yang Zing, and then at the end of the turn get the hell out of the way to make room for the field spell that mostly only does anything on your opponent's turn anyway. It's definitely worth noting the consistent access to Circle, especially with Saruya giving you a free tribute for its cost, gives you another viable way to search Protoss, freeing up Emergence to be used as a starter, and Shisha to focus on your Sword Soul stuff. But of course, since it searches any field spell, you can... I don't fucking know, man. Necro Valley, Dragon Ravine, something ABC. Make a goddamn spellcaster synchro for Secret Village, I don't know. You can also search Ryuge Warzone. Do you want to search Ryuge Warzone? You don't even get to summon because you don't even have the ritual. Hey, while there's Ryuge's on screen, they got this new Sea Serpent. Doesn't do anything. Thank you for coming to the mini Ryuge segment in the middle of the Tenyi segment. Suryu is also a nice addition to the deck for being a reveal for Moye that extends through a negate on Moye. Its summon is much more free than any other Tenyi before it, so you have a lot more room to hold it to play through Interruption. Primite Dragon Ether Barrel sets a Primite spell trap on summon, contribute itself to mill a vanilla, and returns to the hand during the standby phase if you have a vanilla. Scream is a summon negate if you control a vanilla or a big Primite monster, and sets itself during your standby phase if you control a Primite. Kinda weird talking about this without his best friend Blue Eyes Link 1, but also kinda weird talking about it with the Blue Eyes support right around the corner, so I can't do a bit about how, oh, we don't know when this card's gonna be relevant, because yes we do. It's actually quite soon. What I can say right now is that this card adds more starters to the Primate engine, but now at the cost of your normal summon. Since it can set Lordly Load, it gets you access to Roar, and then it can get the fuck out of the way so that Roar can actually resolve, while also putting another vanilla engrave in case you want something with more attack than White Dust on for Roar to banish based on. Also, having another Searcher means there's more ways to get to Drill Beam when you already have access to Roar. In addition, due to a bizarre mistranslation, in the TCG, Ether Barrel doesn't return to the hand during your standby phase, but in either standby phase, meaning he can set Drill Beam, then add himself back to reveal as the cost for it, making it live so much more often. In regards to Scream, my script just says stump speech about why summon negates aren't very good. At a certain point, I won't even have to record audio for these. I can just YouTube poop together explanations of cards from prior videos because everything in the world is exactly the same. Metal Flame Swordsman must first be summoned by Max Metalmorph, tributing a level 5 or higher warrior, can shuffle itself into the deck to search a card that mentions Max, and taxes your opponent for 5. Flame Coating Metalmorph tributes a monster that mentions Max to summon a Nomi that mentions Max, ignoring its summoning conditions, and equips to it, giving it an extra life. Wheel out the TV that the substitute teacher plays the movie Inside Out on. Bring it out here. Bring it! Maybe if the deck doesn't adhere to the rigid constraints of cards summoned in this one random duel in Duelist Kingdom, we'll get more max targets of different types that diversify what the engine can do. Or maybe we'll just get a second playable Metalmorph. Either one works for me. I can see the future. I am on so many amphetamines that my piss melts the toilet bowl. I know everything because they pay me to. And you can too by subscribing to my Patreon, linked in the description, or becoming a YouTube channel member. Smash that like button. Hawk Tua! While Flame Swordsman isn't much of a new payoff himself, his effect in hand searching any card in the archetype rather than just the traps makes him even more consistency for the pure build of this deck. Similarly, while Flame Coat isn't of much use to any deck trying to run a Metalmorph engine like Dragon Link, it gives the pure build exactly what it needs in a legally distinct second copy of Max Metalmorph. And one that has more leeway with what you contribute, so you have access to both Full Metal and Zoa X in the same turn. Alongside Illusionist's inherent synergy with Fiend Smith's, you now have the ability to end on a decent number of disruptions, provided you draw a second Metalmorph Searcher because your one carders still only go through one. But that's not such a bad thing when the floor wasn't really what was lacking in this deck. Fiend Smith's Kiri gives Light Fiends battle protection and halves battle damage. It can banish itself from graveyard to fusion summon a Fiend Smith using monsters from field, including those equipped to a Fiend Smith monster. Rex Tremend is a fusion of a Fiend Smith fusion and a fusion or link monster, is unaffected by card effects except Fiend Smiths while it's equipped, discards a card on summon to mill a Light Fiend, and when it hits the grave, adds back a Fiend Smith. It's been said that any chance of Rex's playability in the TCG was completely tarnished by the ban of Fiend Smith Lacrima, but I'll go a step further. This card is not playable under any circumstances. It's a Towers, but it's still affected by the most common engine in the game right now? Are you serious? I mean, alright, Sequence covers him from the targeting, but have you read Desiree? Alright, let's be constructive. Let's see what we can do. The best idea I've seen with these cards is to use them to sort of jerry-rig a way to both end on Desiree for its negate, and use its send effect the same way you would with Paradise, even though it's not in the extra deck anymore. By sending Kiri Elizon down the road that I must travel, rather than Paradise with Lacrima, you can make Desiree, and then on your opponent's turn, fire Kiri to use Desiree with the link equipped to it to summon Rex and trigger Desiree to send. If you haven't used Desiree's negate yet, you can even have Rex mill Lacrima, who can bring back Agnum Day, who can bring back Desiree, who can bring back Stella's Groove. Are you ready for the problem? This line is almost totally indistinguishable from just playing a second copy of Desiree for Paradise to dump. There's marginal things like Kiri being chainable whenever instead of just in response to a summon, and having such a nothing effect on field that if you draw it, you can just activate it whenever to get it engraved. But I do not expect these cards to change anything meaningful about Fiendsmith packages. Poseidra the Storming Atlantean is a level 7 Sea Serpent that can send a water from hand or field to summon himself, and on summon mills a Merlantian to bounce a card your opponent controls. Abyss-Trite the Atlantean Spirit is rank 7 that reborns a level 7 or lower water boy on summon, and can detach a material to set one Abyss-Trap from deck. Abyss-Steam draws a card for each of the water boy types you control, and if a water is destroyed, can banish itself from grave to add back a Mermail. These cards add a few marginal but relevant advantages to Merlantian that might help this already viable strategy make it even further in the metagame. For one thing, Trite has cornered the ecological niche of thing to put Poseidra on top of. Your previous choices were Mermail Trite, who doesn't do anything and is only practical to summon by wasting a Bahamut effect, and Gaios, who you'd need to play a second copy of if you want to use him as an interruption as well. Atlantean Trite, on the other other hand, gets you an extra body and a trap before Mega evolving into Shore Charge, so aside from the possibility that you'll accidentally clog your monster zones with the extra revive, she's pretty much objectively better than playing 2 Gaios. As for the trap you'd want to grab, there isn't really a better choice than Steam, which can draw 2 or 3 cards to maybe see hand traps, so it's better than something like Sphere or Scorn. Storming Poseidra can be one of your 7s for Trite, and he holds a very special place in the deck's search web, being pretty much the first Dragoon search that freely and profitably extends from hand. I don't know if you knew this, but Sea Serpents are really bad. The value that Moulin Glacier's Hand Rip adds to this deck greatly pales in comparison to its unmatched ability to summon itself from hand. They could errata the effect out tomorrow, and I still know people who would write that thing's full name on their deck list, checking the spelling and everything to make sure, and you know why? He gets on board. He gets on board. So Storming being both a Dragoon's target and an Abyssrine target that can hit the board while also sending a Neptibus or Bodyguards or something is a great addition to your arsenal, and even can be quite good to just hard draw to extend through Disruption. And speaking of Disruption, he can also be useful for that. His trigger effect bounce is obviously good going second, especially since it threatens the destruction-safe detonator, but also on your opponent's turn you can use Ryan or Lacia to trigger Neptibus, Reborn Poseidra, and use both his bounce and the effect of the Atlantean you dump for cost. This also spares search power that would have gone to ending with heavy infantry in hand by only making use of combo pieces you'll be funneling through anyhow and leaving infantry in deck for Poseidra's cost. These are all small things, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye, but with a deck this squarely on the edge of viability, it just might be exactly what they're looking for. Hydrojet Shark summons itself if you control a water Xyz, and either mills a fish-type shark or Xyz spell trap, or can banish itself from grave to add an Aquajet card from deck to hand. Kind of frustrating that you can't use both effects in a turn. Neither effect is even that inherently strong. The mill is only really good for dumping Crystal Shark, which, like Abyss Shark, is only good for making Kraken or Levice, and the only Aquajet worth mentioning is Surface, which is just a Reborn. I guess if it did both, you'd just be able to dump whatever and Surface Reborn it, in what can only be described as a deconstructed E-Telly. As is, it's maybe a better summon with Buzzsaw than Jaws that you can add back with LaVirtue and not have to rely on getting to a spell to summon it. Less versatile because Crystal is so limited, but also a better extender if your play gets stopped at an awkward point. You can also just do the standard Dark Knight Toad board and instead use the searched Aquajet as follow-up for turn 3. Template Skipper is a Cyberse that can summon itself to a zone a Link monster points to, and can banish a Cyberse from hand or grave to be treated as its name for a Link summon. Rather straightforward Malice support, helps you extend through a negated Splash Mage by getting a Malice name back on board, possibly even 2 if the banished Malice triggers there. Doesn't really do anything out of this world though, just its job. He's running circles around the Ryuge card though. Eclipse Twins is a generic rank 4 that can use rank 4s as material, can detach 1 to attack twice on monsters, and when it hits the grave can summon a rank 4 or lower Xyz from grave and attach another one to it from grave. Fascinating design, the sort that I lament I won't ever truly be able to say I've seen everything it can do. Just as a start, this card can help you play under some odd board states where you have a rank 4 and a level 4 and can't just link them off to do something with the bodies. That gives you a way to clear off a rank 4 you stole from your opponent with talents, or to get the materials off of Duo Drive after it was negated, all while under the Raziel rank 4 lock. But of course, one of the most important reasons to want to clear 1 or 2 rank 4s off board all at once is for his very own effect to revive them. This gives you the ability to loop non-once per turn rank 4s like Ferulems and Bahamut, or just recharge ones with no material left. One such loopable rank 4 that's seen play with this card in the OCG is Evil Swarm Ouroboros, which does take a significant amount of material to make, but after being revived with Twins and Plugin, can rip up to 3 cards from your opponent's hand. Chat, has he unpaused the video yet, or is he still arguing about how to pronounce Ouroboros? This is also how you search 2 reptiles for Mitsurugi, and by extension, you could get several machine searches with Geargeigen if that was ever something a deck wanted. With all the beating around the bush done, we can talk about Raziel. Just like how Plugin can bring back an outed Detonator with 2 materials, even if Detonator has to pop himself just to hit the grave, Twins can do it without even using up one of Duo's searches. By using X, the Everything Raziel, the Home for Free Speech, to mill Twins instead of Aggregator in your normal combo, you can end the turn by Detonator attaching Twins so that if he's threatened, he can bail out, triggering Twins to bring him back and attach Duo Drive to him from grave. Then trigger Detonator himself, attaching 1 more mat. This reinforces how sticky the Raziel endboard can be, especially as the popular Fiend Smith build has often chosen to cut Plugin altogether. Now, at just the cost of Aggregator's underwhelming negate, you can reintroduce this protective element to your board. Clockwork Knight is a link 1 for machine-type All-Mirage targets that can send a continuous spell on summon to search Clockwork Knight and contribute another machine to reborn one with 1000 or less attack. Okay? Everyone stand completely still. They've printed a non-broken Link 1. We just have to make sure we don't accident. Damn it! The major thing this card does for Earth Machine is somewhat consistently guarantee at least one disruption for the end board. Clockwork Knight can just be plopped down on the board to mess with types, ruining Fiend Smith lines and cutting off Malice from certain options, or it can be pitched with Anger Knuckle so you can search Regulus for a simple Omni. What's not fully guaranteed is getting to it in the first place. Most of your continuous spells are not super searchable. The best one for this purpose is Heavy Forward, which already starts your main combo by searching Harvester, so now you have something worthwhile to do with the leftover card in the back row. You can also use Multi-Roll as part of a Striker package, not as free because it does have to stick around the whole turn to get its value, but if Knight is more valuable to you than resetting Striker spells would be, that's not a big deal. Another option is Lordly Load as part of a Primate engine, meaning that joke Dimax made in his shitty video that I could have made better. No. And you can also try Crystron engine for inclusion. You can access that with Scrap Recycler milling Smyger, which one might say weaves us to the other important part of Knight, being able to loop your smaller machines like Recycler. For one thing, you can mill O-Lion to put a machine to tribute on board, so you can get a second mill and have 2 Earth machines to make Ballista with. Or if you have another guy on board like Platinum Gadget to summon Recycler with, you have the option to mill Harvester, link off Recycler for Clockwork, then tribute Gadget to summon Recycler again, milling Trencher to bring back Harvester, who can search, merge levels with Recycler, and turn into Infinity to protect the rest of your plays. And speaking of Cyber Dragon, this card also benefits the Cyber Industrial Complex. With Core searching the continuous Cyber Dark Realm, you can add an extra normal Chimera, giving you a continuous on board for Knight to sack, and a guy who likes pitching spell traps to pitch Knight. And Knight Summon lets you link off Core and then trade Chimera to get Core back, triggering Chimera while also giving you the material for Seeger. That guarantees Regulus, Seeger, and Power Bond off of just Core, with plenty of room to go above that into Cyber Darkness Dragon or Cyber Dark End Dragon if you have a discard for Horizon. Aku, the Lightless Shadow, is a Link 4 that requires at least one Fiend that can quick effect discard to either pop a card in the field or tag out until the end phase to reborn a light or dark. And during your standby phase, can draw cards equal to the number of monster types in grave, and then put the same number on the bottom. I am in total disbelief. They did it. They printed Spider-Man. In every way that matters, this card is the new best generic Link 4 to end a turn with. Requiring a Fiend is certainly an attempt at giving it restrictions. I guess it's not Apollo, you can't run through 2 Link 2s and then link them off into a crazy endboard piece. No, one of them's gotta be Fiend Smith sequence. God damn it, you guys. Alright, even if you're not on a Fiend Smith engine, which trust me, we'll come back to, just linking off 2 bodies into Nightmare Phoenix will fulfill the requirement. Even more generically, Beat Cop and Baba Barber don't even ask that they have different names in case I got, I don't know, any Harpy enthusiasts in chat, and the payoff is at minimum a non-targeting pop. But on her own, she goes so much further than that because after making her, you can immediately tag her out to reborn a light or dark from grave to extend or bring back another endboard piece like IP or SP. The intent of this card was to support Evil Twins, where you can tag out Trouble Sunny for the twins, draw a card, then link off for Abao, discard the card, and bring back Sunny so you get both Link 4s on your opponent's turn. Similarly, you can link off Desiree or Agnum Day for Abao, then tag her out to bring them back. If any of you care about Millennium still, this is perfect for their use of Fiendsmith, since she can come back in the end phase after Ankh has wiped your board. But even beyond that, in any deck with any lights or darks, getting a refund on one of the materials for Abao just to link off while keeping the pop for your opponent's turn is already incredibly strong. But then there's the potential to use the reborn on your opponent's turn. In something like Malice, this can be how you bring back Whitebinder to banish a bunch of names from grave and trigger them to come back. You can't make her if you've been locked by Splash Mage already, but making her early in the combo is just fine because you can tag her out to get a Cyberse material back in rotation. Meanwhile, against Malice, you can use Abao to infinitely loop Artifact Lancia, because the last thing we have to talk about with this card is Floodgates. In the OCG, one thing that this card had going for it was that you could use Cherubini to mill Jaugen, link off Cherubini with Sequence for Abao, then tag out to reborn Jaugen. On your opponent's turn, Abao's pop will protect Jaugen from battle, and on your own turn, it can kill the Jaugen so you don't have to play under it. Thankfully, due to the strange uncalled for hits to Gimmick Puppet, Spellbook, and Jurok on the most recent list, we don't have to deal with Jaugen, and the closest equivalent is like Banisher of the Light. But there's still all manner of light and dark floodgates you can access in other ways, like Area Leader dumping Barrier Statue. And then, like a cherry on top, if she survives to turn 3, Abao's second effect can fix your hand, letting you trade leftover hand traps you didn't need for extenders to go for the kill with. It may seem like she's not going to draw too many cards in a mono Fiend deck, but even Yubel has things like Varodras and SP that might have hit the graveyard, and then some zombie and spellcaster hand traps that may have found their way there as well. And then you look at a deck like Memento, and yeah. and if you're afraid she'll be removed before you can resolve that effect, tagging her out for the Reborn will keep her safe in the banished zone where very little can get rid of her. This card has yet to be overwhelmingly present in the OCG, but the major difference there is the legality of Apollo and the prevalence of Fiend Smith in the format. In the TCG, even the two new decks that both should lock you out of Fiend Smith are seeing play with the engine of all time. So theoretically, we may see a little less Light Dragon Adagnister in our format and a little more of her. Tiny Lightning Round Goddess of the two sides searches a coin flip monster on summon and can play one hand of blackjack. If I win, I double it. If I lose, I send myself to the graveyard and draw one. This would be a lot better if it could search spells too, because it would be one more way to Light Force. As is, she's just 3 more copies of the Fiend, but if you search the Sun and just hit heads, like Storm Dragon is a level 9 Light Dragon Synchro that can pop a back row on summon for each vanilla and grave, and on destruction resets a back row from grave, but freezes it unless you control a vanilla. Might as well say pop a back row for every Blue Eyes White Dragon in grave. Just like Ether Barrel, there will be a lot more to say about this guy in 3 weeks, although he's not completely unplayable as is if you want to play like a level 3 Tuner Primite target and tune Engraver into MST. Double Wild searches a level 10 with the same type as a level 5 or lower you control, then can pitch a card to summon a monster with that type from hand, but locks you to that type for the turn. This card is honestly not bad for Yubel. If you get Veiler on Lotus or Beckoning and want to extend, you can target that normal summon, search Spirit, and then summon the Spirit from hand. Getting locked to Fiend is maybe suboptimal, but already something you need to account for with Muckraker lines. It's an unsearchable spell though, so that puts it in a difficult and competitive spot for an engine card. Magistus Chirozzo is a fusion of a Fusion Synchro Xyz Link and a spellcaster that can be summoned by sending those materials from the monster zone or spell trap zone to the graveyard, and is like negate attack, I don't know. Look, they sprung this one on me at the last minute. It's like the only import that matters, and if I'm being honest with you, it doesn't actually matter. The big thing he accomplished in the OCG was converting 2 bodies into a level 4 tuner so Memento could make Savage Dragon, and giving Centurion a 1-card line off just Engraver, but that required Lacrima. The Magistus engine that you may have heard of in the OCG that gets 3 level 4s on board, including Chirozzo, doesn't really exist until we get Spoon, so keep your balls peeled for that import. Eyeballs. Take 2. So watch out for that, we'll talk about it later. Molcharmy Meows is the Molcharmy for Grave and Banish. Yes, this is still the lightning round because this card really is that simple. It's more comparable to Bibu Rulia than Fuwawa, being good against decks that summon more from one zone than the other, rather than just drawing every time your opponent plays Yu-Gi-Oh! With the main difference of course being the normal summon. While Meow Coco may not have the one shared summon it can bank on your opponent wanting to do, it also doesn't have the passive debuff of needing to be shotgunned to get full value, and potentially squander its ceiling by letting your opponent know from the get that they need to play around it. It'll be good against Malice and Fiend Smith, which sounds pretty good right about now, but with the consideration that now there are 3 different Molcharmies to choose from, and still only 2 allowed per turn, you'll have to really consider in deck building and in side decking which ones will really be the best option.
Diabell Star lore update.
That good Goblin Grussy got me going bonkers. In the pussy so deep I'm entering King Kong mode. Hiya! Hiya! She ride the dick so good I call her Adrian Dittman. On some shit you'd have heard of if you paid attention in chemistry, but your dumbass wouldn't know the difference between magnesium and the shit out of your ass. I'm about that life. I'm an instigator. My drugs are on drugs. Saw a goblin from a solid 1/3 of a mile away. Blew his brains out with a sniper rifle the feds and my wife don't know about. I really do this shit. I'm half wizard by blood and 1/4 centaur by marriage. Goblins are my natural enemy. I have quarreled with their kind since before you were even a twinkle in your dad's nutsack. The bugs are back. Goblin Bikers Gone Bonkers is a rank 6 that can attach a material from a monster you control to suck up an opponent's monster,
sexual style,
for each goblin you control, and during your opponent's turn can detach 3 to send a card your opponent controls for each goblin you control. Frankly, this card doesn't actually matter that much. I know, I made a whole big thing about it because people always think the goblin bits are funny, but no, yeah, this is closer to Negate Attack Turtle than to Gone Wild.
Sexual style.
It's not a bad card, it's good removal and a good interruption, but it's another rank 6 competing for space with Wave High King Caesar. Not even like it being generic is that big of a deal because you're pretty much only making rank 6s with Gone Wild,
sexual,
and the Fiend Smith engine anyway. Snake Eye Doom Dragon is a fusion of a Snake Eye and an illusion that can also be summoned by sending any 2 face-up monster cards from the back row to the graveyard, and pushes a monster to the back row on summon. This is a cool extender for the many decks that like to put monsters in the back row. Obviously it was intended for Snake Eye, converting your Poplar, Divine Templar, or Flamberge pushes into a level 8 body that can make Hope Harbinger or trigger Cross Sheep. But even before that deck was turned into a decaying husk that no one will touch with a 10-foot pole, just like my ex-wife! Boom! Still got it! So before that deck was killed with the ban of OSS, it was still kind of awkward turning two of your backroad monsters into a free body when one of them was always Diabellstar, who's a free body on her own, one of them was the IP you want to pull up later, and the last would usually be a send for a Snake Eye effect. It's a similar situation in Centurion, where you don't normally end with more than the 2 Centurions you're going to sync with later on in the back row, but if you happen to have 2 extra, you can more or less synchro them from the back row into an 8. The same play also works in Infernoble, where you can use your equipped bodies without having to use your museum activation, and make a level 8 that can be tuned with your level 1s into Charles. Fiend Smith can maybe spare 2 equips for a free body, something like Link Off Sequence and Desiree into Agnum Day bring back Desiree, and equip Sequence so you can fuse into another body for a Link 2 and hold Desiree and Agnum Day in grave. That's good in Millennium, where you can make Rabbit here, especially because you can also use the Fall Guy you placed in the back row with Wedgeu as material, so you can make 2 Doom Dragon and overlay for Buzz King before linking off. But all of this pales in comparison to Crystal Beast. These idiots are always looking for new things to do with all the random crap they leave lying around in the back, so a non-once per turn free body at the cost of unclogging your back row is a perfect fit. Elet Asamina of the White Forest is a level 2 illusion. Ooh, you know, not a lot of illusions in this set. Haven't really been doing that bit at all in this video. It can reveal itself to summon a White Forest or Asamina from hand, on field polys into an Asamina, and when it's synced off searches a Sinful Spoil. Archetype name of the archetype name is a quick play that can, if you control a fiend, spellcaster, or illusion, summon another one from hand or fusion summon, and sets itself when it's sent to activate a monster effect. Sinful Spoils Awakening can bounce 3 if you control a high-level illusion and your opponent controls 3 or more monsters, and sets itself from grave if you control a high-level illusion. And Asamina Afes is always treated as a White Forest card, bounces cards on the field for each fusion or synchro of the Asamina tri-type you control and in grave, and if it's pitched to activate a monster effect, sets itself. Saint Asamina is a level 10 fusion of a level 6 or higher synchro and a level 6 or higher fusion that your opponent cannot target, nor can they target any of their own cards, and if it was summoned this turn, can quick effect summon an Asamina from deck or extra. These cards were almost more gas for Snake Eye. In the OCG, we saw the deck branching out a bit, using Sylvie to search Tails, Tails getting LZ, and LZ summoning itself to make a 6 and trigger LZ to search a Sinful Spoil. With Arcealago and Sylvie shuffling the Synchro back, you can even make a level 10 Synchro, which are a little better in the OCG, and Ilia Sylvia, all before resolving original Sinful Spoils. 2 fucking Omnis, and then summon Snake Eye Ash. That would make me crash out harder than if my co-star in a Spider-Man movie got engaged, but we don't gotta worry about that. The original Sinful Spoils are dead, and no one mourns the Sinful. Instead, these cards are more useful for White Forest, and more closely tie them in with the Asamina engine. LZ being able to either fuse itself with a White Forest into Sylvia or Arcealago, or be synced off to search Deception, means you can pretty consistently guarantee Sylvia as part of your end board, as well as one of the many decent disruptive spoils like Morian. And of course, you also now have an SEO optimized fusion spell that can be searched with just about anything in this deck, and can do things like summon Guardian Chimera, or hard make Saint Asamina, who's a little too impractical to be summoned with Hallowed, needing 2 separate spoils to be summoned when you usually only have 1 at a time, but can be directly fused into. With White Forest Synchro, you can bounce to bring back a tuner, and a Mu Arcealaga you can bounce to bring back Hallowed. Summoning her will let you cheat out Sylvia in case, say, your attempt to summon her with Hallowed was stopped, or can summon Moa Regina, who requires the same number of spells, but has a much harsher material line. And it can't be ignored that Saint also floodgates your opponent out of being able to target any of their own cards, turning off all sorts of random effects your opponent may have never thought before could all be categorized together. Probably the biggest story though is just how searchable most of these new cards are. LZ and Afes are both Asamina and White Forest cards, so you can find them with Arceala, Arcealago, and Deception, and Sinful Spoils of the White Forest is... yeah. Having easy access to these new back row, both of which follow the White Forest gimmick of being free discards for monster effects, is good for your cost efficiency, as is having an easy to access engine that puts random equip cards in the back row. Yeah, no, here comes Fiend Smith again, roll him out. Fiend Smith actually does a lot for this deck because Afes counts any fusions or synchros that are fiends, spellcasters, or illusions, so Desiree and even Necroquip are 1 more on the count. And Desiree also fulfills one of the materials on Saint, so after using his negate, you can quick fuse him off, triggering him to send, and putting 2 more fusions for Afes to count on board. All of these interactions put more fuel on the fire that is the complex, versatile combo pile of White Forest Asamina, and frankly, I'd be lying to you if I said I could go over all of it or accurately discern between what you might actually encounter in a competitive environment and some crap some dude threw together on EDO Pro the day after the cards were revealed. And you know what? That's okay. I went through a whole thing or two to unpack my obsessive perfectionism, so I think at the very least for a set like Supreme Darkness that isn't as game-breaking and meta-defining as many of the sets before it, I can accept that this video ended up being a little shorter and less detailed than usual. What the?